join me in prayer? Loving Father, help. I've had 20 years to organize these thoughts, and I'm still relying on you to do it for me. Be in this place, in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hello. I feel like I'm echoing through the room. Is that just me? If it's okay for you, it's okay for me. So my name is Steve. Many of you know me, but some of you do not, I'm sure. I currently pastor at Pastor Dean's old district in Chowchilla and Madera. And Jamie is telling the truth. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, I was a senior in college, and I was living in university housing down on Water Street in Lower Manhattan. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the geography of Manhattan, but it was about 500 feet away from the eastern edge of what we call Ground Zero. So I would walk actually to the Trade Center every morning to get on the subway to go to class. And as I was asked to do this, forgive me, saints, I've spent about the last 12 months coming to terms with the reality that I have spent the last 20 years running away from this day. And I've never been asked to share it like this before. So as I sat down to try to figure it out, the first question I had was, what is there left to say after 20 years? What hasn't yet been said? I've been talking about this for 20 years. Every single year for the last decade or so, I have taken to dumping my thoughts on my Facebook. My apologies to those of you who are connected to my Facebook. And every year when I'm done, I think that's it. That's what's been on my heart. That's what I need to say. That's what I've been trying to say. And then 12 months later, there I am again with more to say. I didn't expect this year's series of thoughts to be a sermon. But you know, trauma is the gift that keeps on giving. In the words of Simon and Garfunkel, "Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again." I ran 3,000 miles away, but here it is. I have seen, I'm sure, thousands of videos of this disaster, but I've seen millions of videos behind my eyes. So we begin at the beginning, right? Come with me back to Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. And I do have a slideshow. Am I supposed to advance? There we go. September 11th, 2001. I woke up that morning to the alarm I had set on my root beer colored pager. Do you remember those? That was the first time that I ever noticed. It's 8 a.m. and it's waking me up. The first time I ever noticed that September the 11th on a digital screen is 911. What an interesting thought. I have a vague memory of thinking like, oh, maybe today's a day for an emergency. But that thought went away quickly because I had to get to a music class. And then after lunch, I had a poetry class. So I got up and I had a shower. And as I was getting ready, it was about 8:45 in the morning, I heard an explosion. Now let me bring you into the mind of a jaded New Yorker. It was a legit explosion. I knew it was an explosion, but I just kind of dismissed it. I said, well, maybe it was a pipe bomb. in my head. I drew a narrative in my head. Somebody made a little bomb, threw it in a mailbox, blew up a mailbox. Don't these things happen all the time? So I didn't pay it any attention at all. So where I'm living, I have a few pictures coming up, but where I'm living was in an apartment that faced east, toward the East River, in other words, away from the World Trade Center. So I couldn't just look out my window and see what was happening. I was facing the wrong direction. So I kept on getting ready, and now it's approaching 9 a.m. I'm getting ready to go. I had a roommate at the time. His name was Ethan. And we lived in a one-bedroom apartment, but it was so big. We actually took 2/3 of the living room area and turned it into a second bedroom. So he was my roommate, but we had separate rooms. And I knocked on his door. He was still sleeping. I said, "Hey, Eth, I'm going to class. Be careful today. I think I might have heard a bomb 10 minutes ago." And that was it. He was like, I don't know that he even acknowledged me. So, okay, and tried to go back to sleep. So I closed the door behind me, and I turn, and I'm getting ready to go downstairs, get the bus to go to class. And that is when the second plane hit the second tower. The first explosion exploded northward. My building was to the east. That's why it barely registered to me. But that second one, if you ever seen the videos, the plane came from the south, hit the east side of the building, kind of just got absorbed by the building, exploded from the inside, and there was a huge explosion to the north, south, and east. It knocked my building, literally shook my building, and it knocked my roommate out of his bed. And so he hits the floor, and I hear him hit the floor. So I turn around, and I go back in. It's like, "Hey, you okay?" And he's awake, wide awake. "What's going on? What was that?" I said, "I don't know. Let me go look." I run out to my room to turn on the TV. He turns on the TV in his room, and as I am getting ready to turn on my little TV, I hear him scream. And as the image came on my TV, I saw why he screamed. At that moment, I become aware of sirens for the first time. Now, if you got to understand, New York City is a loud place. And even though I was living on the 30th floor of my 31-floor building, far, far away from the ground, you always hear the sirens anyway. Right? They're always 3 a.m. sirens, 9 a.m. sirens, 2 p.m. sirens, no matter what. There was a hospital not too far from where I was living. Always sirens. You kind of tune them out. But in that moment, with Ethan screaming and the TV yelling at me, I heard a cacophony of sirens. For the first time, I noticed it. And I went to my window to see what I could see. Oh, okay. Sorry. I forgot I put this in there. This is the view out of my apartment window on a normal day. So this is doesn't that beautiful? Don't you want to wake up and see that? See the Brooklyn Bridge, Brooklyn out there? Gorgeous. That's what it looked like on a normal day. That is Water Street. Normally that's a two-way road, north and south. But when I looked out the window, I saw 100% of the cars fleeing to the north, and I realized something was very, very wrong. Those people down there had known that something was wrong for 15 whole more minutes than I did, and they were already turning tail to get out of downtown Manhattan. I don't know that I have the words to properly explain how terrifying that was. New York City is like an animal. It just is what it is, and you try to change it and it will bite you. So for something like that, or an entire, 3-lane avenue, 2-lane avenue of traffic to just be turned on its head like that, just doesn't happen. And I was very, very afraid. Well, the next hour or so after that is kind of a blur, as it was for everybody. 2 airplanes? Do you remember that they didn't realize it was a second airplane right away? They had to wait until they got that footage of the plane coming from the south. At first, all we had was the explosion. No one really knew why. So as the details were coming in, it's like, what? A second plane? It can't be a second plane. Don't you know what that would mean if it was two planes? Never underestimate the power of denial. Oh no, there's new footage. That's definitely a plane. Ethan, there's two planes. We're under attack. These are just pictures I took. They don't always correlate to what I'm saying, but you see that there were thousands, and over the course of the morning, hundreds of thousands of people who were just fleeing on foot. There's a picture coming up of they would just abandon their cars in the middle of the road and run away on foot. For a time, the NYPD was actually evacuating people over the Brooklyn Bridge on foot. You just go to Brooklyn. That ceased after a while. Do you remember that they reported that there was a car bomb at the State Department? Turns out not to have been the case, but that was reported for a good long time. The United States is under attack. There was a car bomb at the State Department. All air traffic is grounded nationwide. I had friends who were on a plane that morning. They got stranded in the middle of the country, couldn't get home for a week. Because, the planes just landed wherever they were. Here's more people fleeing by foot over the Brooklyn Bridge. The Pentagon is hit. Ethan lost his mind when the Pentagon got hit. He could not believe. He said this to me. He said, if they can hit the Pentagon, where can't they hit? That plume of smoke is 3 buildings wide. You ever run into these? You've heard conspiracy theories about this over the last 20 years, right? This is what I always try to emphasize. You don't understand how badly that fire was burning. That fire burned for a month afterwards. It burned hundreds of feet underground. It burned so badly. Well, in any case, the plane crashed in Pennsylvania, and no one knew what to do about that. What did that even mean? Were they trying to hit a field in Pennsylvania? What happened? Nobody knew at first. I'm still in this foggy hour, right? I didn't take that picture. That's a stock photo from the internet. But I want you to see this, which I took from my window, was that plume of smoke just coming over my building. At some point, I called the important people in my life. We didn't have these back then. I had a pay-per-minute internet-based service, and it was empty, so I had to wait until I had enough internet signal to connect to refill my calling card so that I could then call the people in my life. I called Marina, my new girlfriend, who's now my wife, but we'd only been dating for about 1 month by that point. This is the view out my room on that morning. Do you remember how clear it was in that other picture? Nothing has actually collapsed here. This is just the smoke. That's that plume of smoke. That's all you're seeing. And you see the hundreds of thousands of people still evacuating. There's obviously a totally different set of people by this point. Over the course of that hour, we all settled into the reality of being under attack. We got a few closer ups coming. I like this picture because nothing has fallen down yet, but you may see that, I don't know, does this have a pointer? Yeah, it does. You see? They were leaving tracks in the dust just by driving their cars. A huge, thick layer of dust had settled over everything, and the buildings were still standing. See this little traffic jam? That's because this guy left his car in the middle of the road, took off on foot. Now everybody else behind him can't get out. If you're going to abandon your car, pull over to the side first. And as we're settling into this reality, there was an earthquake. A greater earthquake than I have experienced as an 18-year resident of California. But of course it wasn't really an earthquake, was it? I saw the first building collapse on TV, and also looking out the window of Ethan's room, not my room, I was in his room with him. Across the street was the Prudential Bank building. And it had a lot of glass on it. And so I saw the building collapse in the reflection coming off the Prudential Bank building. And saints, I said my last prayer. I expected it to be my last prayer. Have you ever expected to die? Have you ever thought, this is it? There's no tomorrow, there's not even a minute from now, this is it. I prayed my last prayer, and he may remember it differently, but I think Ethan, my atheist Jewish roommate, I think he prayed his last prayer too. Because there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. But hey, man, I didn't die. So once I realized I was still alive, I ran to my window and I got my camera, which I had already taken some pictures, but now, look how much different that is. Now I wanted to photograph what was happening. Do you remember how you used to be able to see the street? Remember that picture. It becomes relevant in a minute here. All right, I'm going to make a movie reference, which I know is sometimes a difficult sell for an Adventist audience. But if you have seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones movie, do you remember what happens when he takes the statue off the pedestal and tries to escape? Anybody? Bueller? See, you get that reference. Come on now. Yeah, that's the boulder. The boulder starts chasing him. That's what's happening here. You can't tell from the still image. But that wall of smoke is barreling down the road. And Ethan is standing immediately off camera to my right, screaming swear words at me to close the window. Close the window, what are you doing? I got the window closed. That's the Prudential Bank building. A minute or two prior to this, I could clearly see the building falling down in the reflection of those windows. Now you can hardly even see the windows themselves. That's how smoky it was. All right, so now, Ethan wants to leave. I want to keep taking pictures. He says, we gotta go, let's go. And so, okay. Got my shoes on, I was already dressed for class. This dude is still in his pajamas. But he wants to go, and so we left. I grabbed my shoes and my camera, and we ran. We started going down the stairs, and we made it about halfway down, about 15 floors down, and there was nobody else. No one else in the staircase. It was creepy, like a horror movie. No one else was there. I kept thinking the whole way, do they not know what just happened? Fun fact, I learned later on someone actually slept through this whole thing. Woke up later on in the morning to an empty building. Had no idea why. I can't sleep that well. I wish I could get that guy to teach me how to sleep that soundly, right? Anyway, we were stopped by building security on the 15th floor. Two burly dudes. Where are you going? We're leaving. You can't go outside. What do you mean? Do you not know what's going on out there? He says to me, yes, I know what's going on out there. If you go out there, you can't breathe. Go back to your room, turn off your air conditioner, close your window, wait for instructions. You can't breathe if you go outside. They escorted us back upstairs in the service elevator. And I wept like a child. Trauma is not just about the traumatic event itself, but trauma is amplified by feelings of helplessness. And I have never in my life felt more helpless than being trapped in that metal box, being escorted back to what I thought for sure was going to be my death by two strangers who were bigger than me. And I wept like a child. And so when we got back to the room, it was a subdued atmosphere, as you can imagine. We didn't talk much, at least I don't remember talking much. I felt trapped. I felt defeated. But I didn't get to stay in that condition for very long because there was another earthquake. And I prayed my last prayer again. Have you ever thought you were going to die 2 times in the same morning? But this time, I am so mad at myself for this. This time, within 1, maybe 2 minutes, there was a pounding at our door because Mayor Rudy Giuliani had declared Lower Manhattan to be an evacuation zone. Get out. It was no longer shelter in place. No longer do we even care if you can breathe. Grab yourself a towel and go. We were forced out of the building. And this time, as Ethan and I are running downstairs, he, still in his pajamas, as we're running downstairs, now we're surrounded by thousands of other people. At around the 4th floor, maybe the 3rd, but close to the bottom, the young woman who was fleeing in front of me, because you got to imagine the whole stairway was full, right? And the young woman in front of me stopped. People don't act very rationally in situations like this. This woman, we were not even on a landing. It was the middle of a stairwell, and she just couldn't move any further. And I stopped because I saw her, but the person behind me didn't stop, so he crashes into me, and then I crash into her, and she is not even aware of what's happening at that point. She was somewhere else. And I had these visions. I said, this girl's going to die. She's going to get trampled. So I shoved her. Not my finest moment, right? But I did. I shoved her down. Because there's only like 3 or 4 more steps until the landing, where, it turns around to keep going down again. And so I just pushed her down to the landing to get her out of the flow of the traffic. So she can be mad at me, but she'll still be alive. So she said, go, go, go. I got her down to the landing, and I grabbed her, and I pulled her out of the flow of humanity. And Ethan was still in the flow of humanity. So he's continuing downstairs. He looks back for me, and he doesn't see me, so he stops in the middle of the stairway. This is not a good idea. Don't stop in the middle of a stairway. He turns around, he sees me. People are bumping him, but he sees me. He's like, come on, come on. And I just yelled at him and said, I can't. I have to stay with her. Keep going, I'll see you outside. And I stayed with that poor young woman until we made a deal. She had frozen because she became separated from her own roommate, and she felt too alone and scared to keep going. And she kept babbling that to me. I lost my roommate. I don't know where to go. I lost my roommate. I said, we can't stay here. We got to go. She says, will you stay with me? You know what she had that I didn't have? She had a towel. I said, I will stay with you until you find your roommate if you share your towel with me outside. I guess that is kind of funny. But remember, you can't breathe outside. She agreed, and so we kept on walking down and we made it out. Outside the building, it was a beautiful day. It was like 82 degrees. It was humid. 82 degrees and humid in New York is hot. I'd prefer 100 degrees of dry heat here in the valley than 82 degrees with East Coast humidity. It was hot, but it was also clear. And I distinctly remember looking up toward heaven. I didn't realize that was what I was doing, but at the sky, it was all smoky, but it's like you could see through the smoke, and above the smoke was this crystal clear, gorgeous, blue sky. But, it's a beautiful day up there. It's just not such a beautiful day down here. So it's 82 degrees and humid, and my face is wrapped in a towel. And I'm connected to this girl, this stranger, and we're just wandering. We had no choice where to go. The NYPD was funneling everybody in one direction. We were to exit the downtown area through Chinatown, actually. So they sent us eastward through Chinatown out to the river, then northward, and then back west into the central of the island again. And finally, when we hit Houston Street, we could go where we wanted. But below Houston Street was now, and for several more weeks, it was now a military-occupied zone, and you could not go there on your own. So it was while exiting through Chinatown that I realized my biggest regret of that day. I left my camera in the room, which is why I have no more pictures. And I'll tell you, the thoughts I had, I realized this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I can't believe I lost my camera. I have no cash on me. I did have credit cards on me, but credit card machines didn't work for several days after that. Even the phones weren't working. So I had this thought. I said, what if I just break into a store and steal a camera? I didn't do that. But mostly because I thought I'd get caught. And to this day, 20 years later, I am so mad at myself. I was in film school. How do you forget your camera? But I did. Well, from there, things were calmer. And from there, my testimony becomes much more internal, psychological. And I thought about going through all that, but then what would I say next year? This is a sermon, right? You're not just here to enter into my trauma. We need to praise the Lord. And so, how did the Lord use this? This event is inextricable from my larger testimony toward and with Jesus Christ. If this didn't happen to me, I would not be here with you today. You see, this event really messed me up. And I mean messed me up hard, immediately and hard. I spent 13 months after that symptomatically falling apart. I made just about every bad choice you can think to make. And then after that 13 months, I spent another 5 years or so with active triggers. PTSD symptoms. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And as I was telling Chloe on the way over here, Chloe's my daughter who was singing, for years I could not look at a low-flying aircraft without getting nervous about it. And I was now living in Santa Cruz, so you drive up through San Jose, 880 takes you right by the airport. Every single time, low-flying aircraft. Didn't even have to be an airplane, could have been a helicopter. An aircraft in the air, lower than I thought it should be, would send a panic into me for years. Sirens, same thing. Sirens were a trigger for me. But in any case, in that last year, I almost flunked my music class, and I almost flunked my poetry class, and I am convinced the only reason I didn't is because the teachers knew that this happened to me and they felt bad for me. So I got a D and a C instead. I lost my job. I lost my future job prospects. I alienated all of my friends, every single one of them. Ethan is the only one that I speak to, and probably only once every 5 years. I drank too much. I know in this audience, any is too much, right? But you got to trust me, I drank too much. And I slept too little. And I survived, at least mentally speaking, because of only two things. Marina was one of them, and music was another. I fell in love with a band, and I spent 2 years following them around. And that actually had started before the September 11th attacks, but Marina and this band were the only times I ever felt happy. So I just immersed myself in both of those things. I woke up in October of 2002 realizing that I was on a pathway to destruction. And I don't mean hellfire. I didn't have a religious training at that point to really understand that. It wasn't really a religious idea at all. It was just I knew that death was coming. Right? System failure was coming if I continued on this road. So, told you music helped me, right? It wasn't just this one band. There was a song that was popular when I was in high school, which is kind of a joke song. I can't imagine it's anybody's favorite song. But it really profoundly impacted me in 1999. It was a driving force in why I chose to meet my wife in the first place. My wife was living here in California. She was not my wife at the time, but she was here in California and I was way over there. So when I woke up and realized that I was failing and dying, I knew I had to get out, and I knew I had to go somewhere safer. And so those lyrics just kept coming to my mind. Somebody, you're going to laugh if you even recognize the song. Somebody once asked, could I spare some change for gas? I need to get myself away from this place. I said, yep, what a concept. I could use a little fuel myself, and we could all use a little change. And that song, with some other influences, convinced me to pack up everything I owned into one suitcase and get on an airplane and never come back. So at 22 years old, I started my entire life all over again with whatever I could shove into one bag. And if you think that sounds like a good way to financially handicap the entire rest of your life, you're right. But it's okay, because God was in it. Now I'm in California, and I am broke, and I'm getting broker, and it's going fast. I am paying my electricity bill with my credit card because I don't have the cash on hand to pay it. I'm charging everything except rent. I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. My girlfriend is in college at that time. She's a little bit younger than me, so she's not really helping. I'm supporting the both of us with my non-existent income. I think I was working a Blockbuster Video, and I was just going nowhere fast. So I found an ad in the paper. Remember those newspapers? And the ad was to open an insurance agency. It got me with unlimited income potential if you're actually good at selling insurance, which I wasn't. But that was it. I said, I'm going into debt, and I need to fix that, and here is the answer. So I went and I met with the insurance company and the district manager, and I signed up, and I opened an insurance business, and I sold insurance for 3.5 years. And why is that relevant? Because that district manager was the head elder of the Santa Cruz Seventh-day Adventist Church. You may even know the name. I don't know if you do, but Hugh Seagraves was his name. And that man changed my life over lunch at an Italian restaurant one day when he asked me, "How is your relationship to God?" And I have no idea where this answer came from. I said, it's kind of up and it's kind of down. It's all over the place. He said, I'm starting a Bible study at my home. Why don't you come? I said, I'd love to, but I don't own a Bible. And he said, no problem. Go to the store and get one, right? They go to any store. They sell them all over the place. And I said, Hugh, you're my boss. You know how much money I earn every month. You think I can afford a Bible? He says, don't worry. I'll buy you one. And he did. And he had my name engraved on the front cover, and I still have that Bible in my office at the Madera Church. From that moment, there was an unbroken journey until right now. And really, if you've been following along, that means there was an unbroken journey from the moment that Ethan fell out of bed until right now. It was an unbroken journey from terror and destruction, not only to my own salvation, but also my wife's, who at one time in her life vowed to never marry a Christian. And then God laughed at her. My children's salvation. And then today, here we are celebrating Christina's and Michaela's salvation. And by God's grace, I get to be part of those journeys too. There has been an unbroken journey fueled in no small part by Ellen White's Testimonies to the Church, Volume 9, wherein we read that have mercy, I have more pictures. On one occasion, when in New York City I was in the night season called upon to behold buildings rising story after story toward heaven. These buildings were warranted to be fireproof, and they were erected to glorify their owners and builders. But the scene that next passed before me was an alarm of fire. Men looked at the lofty and supposedly fireproof buildings and said, "They are perfectly safe." Which is why thousands of firefighters charged to their certain dooms, because no one expected those buildings to fall. But these buildings were consumed as if made of pitch. The fire engines could do nothing to stay the destruction, and the firemen were unable to operate the engines. Did you know that our prophet told us about this attack 96 years before it happened? Sounds like the Lord knew what he was doing for me. He took wreckage and turned it into beauty, and he connected me with prophetic writings that helped me to understand that I was on a path not of my own choosing. The Lord chose this path for me. And I have preached about this a few times, never in the detail that I've shared with you today, but I've preached it in the context of all things work to the good of those who love God. Even when your whole life is shattered in front of you, the promise is there's some goodness that God will bring out of it. So I appeal to you to never forget. I certainly won't. But the world around us has and is and will continue to, and so I beg you to never forget, but to always press forward right? God's truth is marching on, and Christ is coming soon. I just preached on this writing this morning and last week, actually, at the other church. All you got to do is listen to me for 40 minutes talk about this writing, and you will see that I believe with my entire heart that Jesus is coming soon. Sooner than probably you think he's coming. I'm usually the person in the room who thinks he's coming soonest. So we are called to live like God's people who have this prophetic insight into not only this horrid day, but everything that's come after and its place in the larger picture of the return of Jesus Christ. Do we understand that that is a huge responsibility for us? Somewhere out there, there are hundreds of thousands of other people who had similar experiences to me. And a lot of them are doing much worse than I am. I know this because I'm part of the World Trade Center Health Registry. And I'm part of this group that they've been tracking for 20 years. Those people, I'm sure, don't all know God. But they need to know God. And the world needs to know God. Even if they weren't there, this event impacted every one of us. How much easier will it be to process if we recognize how God can be in it? How God actually told us about it ahead of time. How God is using it to warn us of the return of Jesus Christ. And so with that, I'm not out of things to say, but I'm choosing to be out of time because this is not really about me. This is about Christina and Michaela and saying goodbye to their family. So I'm going to leave you with that. But I beg you, if God permitted this event as a warning, if God permitted this event to wake up his church as to where we are in time, then let's not make it in vain. Amen? Let's recognize the responsibility that we have and not let that day be for nothing. May God bless you all. I don't know what's coming next, but I have to go get changed for the baptism. So may God bless you all, and I'll see you in a few minutes.